Hello everybody, I hope you're all well. So today I'm going to be making a video all about kinks and feminism. This has been very highly requested by you guys, and in particular I'm going to be focusing on the normalisation of rough sex and kink. So in this video I will obviously be talking about the normalisation of rough sex and kink, but I'm also going to be talking about the belle delphine situation which happened on Twitter a couple of months ago. I'll be talking about armie hammer and how kinks can become misogynistic, and also kink on TikTok, and basically just kink being mainstreamed really. And I am going to add a trigger warning with this video. I'm obviously going to be talking about rough sex and kink. I'll be talking about kinks anything from spanking all the way to kidnapping and play. There will be discussions about sexual assault and kinks being performed without people's consent, and also discussions of violence and misogyny. So if this is something which makes you feel uncomfortable and you just can't watch it, please do not watch this video. Things I won't be discussing in this video is the psychology of kinks and the ethics of kinks. I feel like when people have discussions about kink in general, there is so much focus on the ethics of kinks, whether it's right or wrong to let your sexual partner hit you, spank you, punch you, spit on you, choke you during sex. And don't get me wrong, I do think it's important to have these discussions, and I do find this very interesting. People focus so much on the ethics of these kinks rather than how these kinks are actually performed and acted out, because that's what I think can do the most damage, and it gets glossed over so often. And I do think when people discuss the ethics of extreme kinks such as play, people often forget that these kinks are often a result of trauma, and that is something which everyone needs to bear in mind when we do have this discussion. And just for context purposes, I have sort of been into kink for like nearly a year now. I'm not going to get too personal, but I did used to be someone who had a really unhealthy relationship with sex. I had a really unhealthy relationship with sex for about 2 years. Like, I would literally have panic attacks and everything, guys. It's really embarrassing. It's not embarrassing, by the way. I just find it like uncomfortable to talk about. And now I probably have the healthiest relationship with sex that I've ever had. Not to get too personal, but I basically just like men being really aggressive, dominant, borderlining on violent, but I don't always have to have rough kinky sex to enjoy it. First of all, just because you have kinky sex doesn't necessarily mean it's rough. You can still have very tender emotional sex and it be kinky, but I still have like vanilla sex, because I don't know about anyone else, but I find like kinky sex really like mentally draining. And if you guys want to know more about kinks and more in-depth information, I really recommend checking out Kat Black's channel. She has made multiple really good videos about kink and her relationship with sex. This is probably going to be the only video I ever make about kink, just because I don't feel qualified enough to talk about it loads. I'm not part of any kink forums or communities. I have one friend who, if I ever have questions about kink or I want to discuss something, I'll just hit her up and message her. So I just don't really feel qualified to talk about it on any deeper level, at least at the moment. And just before I get into this video, I would just like to thank our sponsor for today, which is Surfshark. Surfshark is a VPN service which stands for Virtual Private Network, which lets you change your location on your phone or your laptop to anywhere in the world. It also encrypts your data, so your internet activity is hidden and your personal info is safe. Surfshark is great for me personally because, as you can imagine, whilst I was researching for this video, because it is about kink and fetish and porn, I had to go on some slightly shifty and questionable websites, but with Surfshark I felt completely safe and secure using these websites, knowing that my location nor my personal info could be accessed. A few other Surfshark features which I love is being able to access content which is blocked in our country. A lot of websites, and specifically YouTube videos, are blocked in the UK. So for example, if I want to watch a YouTube video which is blocked by Channel 4, I can just change my location using Surfshark and I'll be able to access it. It is literally just so easy and convenient. So not only is Surfshark great for protecting your personal data and location when you're going on quite questionable websites, but it's also great for staying safe on public Wi-Fi where your personal data is most at risk. But probably my favourite feature is with just one Surfshark account, you can use it on multiple devices. So I use Surfshark on both of my laptops and also my phone, and you can do that from just one account. You don't need to have multiple accounts to do that. So if you guys are interested in Surfshark, they have given you guys an amazing deal. If you just use my code, which is jordantheresa in all caps, you can get 83% off and 3 months extra for free. And they're also offering a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you guys can try it with absolutely no risks. I'll leave my link down below so you guys can check it out if you want to know more. And again, thank you Surfshark for sponsoring today's video. Okay, so what the bulk of this video is going to be about is the normalisation of rough sex. Now, I do actually hate the word normalisation now because I think it just gets thrown around so often. It's sort of lost its meaning, but it's the only word that I can think of using. What we are seeing on social media, in particular on TikTok and Twitter, is rough sex becoming normalised. Rather than rough sex being a choice and being an addition to sex, rough sex is becoming the expectation, and the word vanilla, rather than it being used as just a describing word to describe sort of normal basic sex, it's now being used as an insult and as a way to call people boring. And people have even coined the term vanilla shaming because of this whole phenomenon. And I think there are a few reasons why rough sex has become normalised, especially in the last 10 years, and a big reason for that is the porn industry. If you guys don't know, the porn industry has changed a lot in probably the last 30 years. 30 years ago, if you wanted to watch porn, you would literally have to walk into a sex store and buy a physical copy, and there'd probably be what, like £5–10, which is a lot to spend on one porn video. And even when porn on the internet first came around, it would still take a really long time to actually download it, so you wouldn't be able to access loads of porn. And now it's completely changed. There are thousands of porn websites with thousands of high quality free porn videos at your fingertips. Every year Pornhub releases insights of the most popular search terms, which by the way, I do not trust these at all. They've definitely been skewed because if you guys don't know, Pornhub is an extremely shifty company to say the least. They're very exploitative. But in general, some of the most popular search terms on just popular porn sites are teen, gangbang, anal, threesome, squirt, schoolgirl, stepmom, stepsister, stepson, rough, MILF, and this isn't including search terms related to race or ethnicity, such as Japanese, Korean, ebony, Latina, BBC, etc. Again, like I said earlier, I'm not here to psychoanalyze what porn people are into, but the fact that teen is one of the most popular search terms on most porn websites is concerning, to say the least. And if I get one person commenting saying, oh well, MILF is a popular search term too, that doesn't make a difference. Just because there's loads of people who want to hot mums doesn't mean that teen being a popular search term isn't worrying. And you guys know that I'm very supportive of sex workers, but the amateur porn industry in particular is a very, very shady business, extremely exploitative. They usually hunt out literally freshly turned 18-year-old girls and convince them to get into porn. Lots of false promises. I recommend checking out the documentary Hot Girls Wanted if you guys want to know more. And the most popular videos on these websites do involve rough sex and kink, whether it's just having sex extremely hard and extremely rough, whether it's choking, spanking, slapping, punching, spitting, rough oral sex as well. There is actually a really, really good scene in Euphoria which talks about this. And because the most popular videos on these porn websites are rough sex and kink, and the people consuming this, usually straight men, because this is the only thing they're consuming, they start to think that that is normal and that that is sex. And I also think another big contributor to this is the lack of sex education. I don't know how it is in other countries, but over here in the UK, our sex education consists of learning about periods. I remember having a mixed sex education class when I was in primary school about puberty, and when I was 15 we learned about pregnancy, labour, contraception, STDs, and how to put a condom on a blue synthetic penis. And that was it. There was absolutely no education about like sex in general, about consent. And I know that there are a lot of men out there who are aware that porn is not a realistic depiction of sex, that porn is literally just a fantasy and that's how you should take it. But we really need to stop overestimating people's intelligence. A lot of men do get their sex education from porn. A lot of men think that porn is what sex is. They don't realise that it's just an overconflated fantasy. And the reason why straight men are more susceptible into thinking that porn is realistic rather than women is because women know what female pleasure looks like. We'll watch porn and the girls are literally like screaming so loudly, and that's not realistic. I've never felt that good that I've literally screamed. I mean, doing this isn't gonna do anything for anyone. And any woman that's had sex before will know that if a guy with a huge dick just rams it into you in doggy with literally no foreplay, that's not gonna feel good, that's gonna hurt. And because a lot of men do think that porn is a realistic depiction of sex, and the majority of the porn they consume involves rough sex and kink, and in those pornos the women look like they're enjoying themselves, they think that that is sex, and they think that sex inherently involves roughness and kink. And also, this isn't even touching on the really big issues with porn, and maybe I'm reaching here, but I do feel like if you are a man who is constantly consuming really rough and kinky porn, you're just going to end up becoming desensitized to vanilla sex. And I think porn and the normalization of rough sex just bleeds into social media. Obviously we're seeing discussions about sex and kink, we've been seeing them on Twitter for time, but more recently on TikTok. And I remember when I was younger, in my Arctic Monkeys AM whack grunge era, kinky sex and like black and white gifs of choking were really popular on Tumblr, and a lot of young people are on these social media websites who haven't had sex yet, and they're consuming this content thinking that that is what they're now expected to do during sex, that rough sex is an expectation and it isn't an add-on to sex. Now, I do think this is going to be a hot take, but I do stand by it. Kink should not be normalised. Kink should not be mainstreamed. Kink belongs in kink spaces. Do I think that people should be shamed for their kinks? Absolutely not. But do I think that kink should be normalised? No, because kink isn't normal, and that's okay. I think some people want kink to be seen as normal as some kind of form of validation, which I kind of do understand, but I think that we've seen how damaging normalising rough sex can be, and it's mostly either women partaking in rough and kinky sex which they don't feel comfortable with because they feel pressured to because of social media, porn, their partner, or a mix of everything, or we are seeing men having rough sex with women and kink without their consent. And by the way, guys, consent can be sexy. It really baffles me. Like, sorry, you cannot just spit in a girl's mouth without asking her. You can literally say during sex, do you want me to spit in your mouth? That's hot as shit. Like, you can discuss if it's a hookup what kind of stuff you're into before. Like, I've literally done that before and it went really well and it was a really sexy conversation. And because a lot of people are being spanked, spat on, choked, their hair's being pulled without their consent, or they feel like they need to do it because they feel pressured, a lot of people are being left traumatized, and a lot of people are developing very unhealthy relationships with sex. And like I said earlier, I feel like when there are mainstream conversations about kink and rough sex, people focus so much on the pedantics of like, why do people want to do this and is it right or wrong, and they don't actually focus on how people are carrying out these kinks, which is what causes the real damage here. And the whole reason why young people are feeling pressured to partake in this stuff is because whenever people do talk about kink, they're praising rough sex and kink whilst also putting down vanilla sex and saying that vanilla sex is boring. So of course a load of young people are going to feel pressured into partaking in kinks which they don't even like that much because there's a load of people on social media saying vanilla sex is boring. There is nothing wrong with having an interest in kink and partaking in kink consensually, but what I think can be a slight problem, which I know this is going to sound patronising, I am only 22, but please do not walk before you can run. And what I mean by that is, if you are just starting to have sex, maybe slow down on the kinky stuff and just have some normal, basic, vanilla sex. There's nothing wrong with that. Learn the ropes first, get used to it, because Sex can be extremely overwhelming and it's a really unique experience for everyone, and I think because people are seeing all this shit on social media, you know, being spanked really hard during sex when you've only just started having sex, I just don't think is a good idea. Learn the ropes first. I do think people do underestimate how intense kinks can be, and I just don't want a load of young people throwing themselves in the deep end without exploring basic vanilla sex first, because if you do throw yourself in the deep end, it can leave you with trauma. If you don't explore kink in a healthy way, you aren't going to enjoy it. And something which I think links really heavily with the normalisation of rough sex is the term vanilla now being used as an insult. If you guys don't know what vanilla means, it basically is just a describing word to describe basic, normal, non-kinky sex. It's been around for years and it's been used by the kink community for years, and it isn't an insult. As much as it's been twisted to be an insult now, it's literally just a describing word, but we're seeing a lot on social media, especially on TikTok. Vanilla is now being used as an insult. The sort of scenarios where I see vanilla shaming being used the most is in the TikTok comment section. As hilarious as the TikTok comment section can be, it becomes a messy place very easily and very quickly. So there will be some kind of discussion in a TikTok comment section about rough sex or kink, whether it's someone saying, oh, I don't get it, I don't get why someone would want to do this, or it doesn't feel right that you would let a man hit you, something along those lines. And the immediate response from people in the comments is basically calling them boring or using vanilla as an insult rather than partaking in a healthy conversation about kink. Another instance where vanilla shaming happened was when Jay Alvarez released his sex tape. If you guys don't know who Jay Alvarez is, he was a travel Instagrammer. He was really popular like 2014 to 2016. He used to date Alexis Ren. Please do not go and stake this video out, because I have to say the word allegedly because I don't want to get sued, but allegedly Jay Alvarez released it without the consent of the girl he was in it with, which was his, I believe, his ex-girlfriend Sveta Billy. So don't go and watch this video because allegedly it has been released without her consent. The sex tape blew up on Twitter and it blew up on TikTok as well, and basically there was one part of the sex tape which everyone was talking about where Jay puts a piece of like coconut oil into a kettle, warms it up and then pours it all over the girl. Now, warming up coconut oil during sex is absolutely fine, especially because coconut oil comes in a solid block, and using coconut oil as lube is also safe and fine as well. But please do not boil coconut oil. Like, he must have just been warming it up in the kettle. He obviously didn't boil it, because if you boil oil and pour it on someone, you are going to severely burn yourself, so please don't do that. But anyways, a lot of people on TikTok were freaking out like, oh my god, this is so freaky, this is so kinky, etc, etc, etc. And nearly immediately in the comments there were people saying, this isn't kinky, you guys are so vanilla, you know, this is boring, just admit that you're vanilla. And as soon as people would criticize them and say, hey, don't use vanilla as an insult, being vanilla isn't a bad thing, they would immediately reply with, I wasn't saying it's an insult, I was literally just describing that you're vanilla. And it's like, no, you were saying it in a shitty way, you were saying it as an insult, don't try and backtrack now. And don't get me wrong, as someone who is into kink, I do understand why people get defensive, because I think when you're discussing kink with someone who isn't into kink and they're either a bit weirded out by it, a little bit grossed out by it, I think it's normal to get defensive. But unfortunately this has spiraled into a load of people throwing vanilla around as an insult and calling people who don't want to be smacked in bed boring. And if I'm gonna be honest, I find people who use vanilla as an insult so embarrassing. Like, I genuinely find it so cringy, like it kind of makes my skin crawl. Again, maybe this is a reach, but I do feel like this is true. I feel like a lot of people who use vanilla as an insult have probably never had sex before, just because first of all, I think most people who are into kink have had vanilla sex before and enjoyed it. Whether they still have it now, you know, depends. I know that a lot of people who aren't into kink wouldn't just like dismiss vanilla sex as boring, because we've all done it. We've all done it before. And also people who are into kink know what it's like for people to look down on their sexual preferences and their sex lives, etc. So they wouldn't do the same thing to someone else because they know how it feels. Back onto the topic of rough sex and kink, there are a lot of people like me who agree with me that rough sex and kink should not be normalised because it's not normal and that's okay. But on the other hand, there are a lot of people who do believe that rough sex should be normalised. I don't know whether it's out of validity or whether it's just because they don't want to be judged. It's probably a mix of both. And there was actually one account which I found on TikTok, which I'm not going to name it, the account got taken down, but basically they agreed with normalising kink, and their bio was literally helping normalise BDSM relationships. She had a sub-dom 24/7 BDSM relationship with her husband, and it wasn't just sub-dom daddy stuff just kept to the bedroom. Because it was 24/7, it was outside of the bedroom too. I'm pretty sure from what I could remember, she wore a collar which had a key, and her husband, her dominant, had the key. And I'm pretty sure she would only address her husband by daddy. And do what you want, but she was doing this in front of her kid, which just did not sit right with me. I'm pretty sure her kid was around like 4 or 5 years old, and I do want to know you guys' opinions on this because obviously I am very new to kink and I do have very limited knowledge on 24/7 BDSM relationships. I know she obviously wasn't doing actual sex acts in front of her child. She was just wearing a collar and calling her husband daddy, but because it's part of the 24/7 BDSM relationship, it just doesn't sit right with me. And I understand that 24/7 BDSM relationships are a lifestyle, but maybe if you have a kid, that lifestyle isn't for you. It just doesn't sit right with me. Again, I know it's not explicitly a sex act, and I know the word daddy isn't inherently sexual, and I know wearing a collar isn't inherently sexual, but all I can think about is that kid growing up learning about kink and BDSM relationships and realizing that they had witnessed their parents' 24/7 BDSM relationship and possibly feeling quite violated. I don't know, it really doesn't sit right with me, but again, I would love to know what you guys think. You know, your child cannot consent to watching that because they are a child. If you guys want to know a little bit more about 24/7 BDSM relationships, I really recommend checking out Kat Black's video, BDSM in the Grocery Store, because she talks about 24/7 BDSM relationships and public BDSM in a really like clear and concise way. I was watching it the whole time like, yes, I agree. And another situation which I think relates a lot to mainstreaming kink is the whole Belle Delphine situation, which went down a couple of months ago. If you guys don't know who Belle Delphine is, she is a very famous online sex worker. She posts OnlyFans content, and very recently she started posting sex tapes on her OnlyFans. I've listened to the Happy Hour podcast which she was on. She seems really sound, so I do genuinely like her, but just because you like someone doesn't mean that you can't be critical of some of the things they've done. So what she did, and again, I'm not going to insert the pictures, she posted 4 pictures onto Twitter where she was wearing sort of very frilly short dress, and she was bound with rope. She had tape over her mouth. It was a kidnapping fantasy, and there was another picture of her having sex with this like random guy. I'm assuming it was her boyfriend. It was a kidnapping fantasy, and a lot of people also perceived it as a form of play, and she received a lot of backlash for this. A lot of people were just disgusted in general with fantasies and play, but also she did post it without a trigger warning, so there were a few people who did get triggered by these set of images. And then after the backlash, she posted another tweet which was basically a non-apology, which is what I want to talk about. I do just want to let you guys know that she did actually take both of these tweets down, so I'm assuming that maybe she's realised where she went wrong, or she just sort of wanted to clear it off. She didn't want to have like that negative connotation surrounding her. I don't know. And again, I don't like to be overly critical of sex workers because I do feel like sex workers get enough flack as it is, but this is just something that I want to talk about because it did happen. I'll leave it on the screen and you guys can pause it if you want to read the whole thing, but basically she says she never said it was she enjoys consensual non-consent, and that doesn't necessarily promote. So I'm still not really sure if the photo set was intended to be play or not, but a lot of people did perceive it as play. But I want to focus on 2 sections of the non-apology. The first one was, no one likes no one wants to exist. Saying that I support is the same as saying that 50% of the female population does. 31 to 61% of women have power play / play fantasies in the exact same way. I consented to being tied up and having rough sex. Like I said in the beginning of the video, I'm not here to break down kinks and discuss whether they're ethical or not. What I want to focus on is her grouping together power play and play. Now, I'm pretty sure that play is a subgenre of power play. Power play is like a big umbrella term which encases a lot of things. So for example, I'm someone who's into power play. I like to be like tied up and dominated, blah blah, but I'm someone who's not into play, and a lot of people who are into power play aren't into play. So you can't group together power play and play, because even though play is power play, not all power play is play. And another thing she said in her non-apology was, I post a lot of sexual stuff to my Twitter because it's for my OnlyFans. People who are sensitive to kinks and sexual content shouldn't be following me. I've made it very clear that I'm posting hardcore porn. And the thing is with Belle Delphine's Twitter, you do know what you're getting when you go on there. There's a lot of very sexual pictures and videos. But the problem is that the most kinky thing she'd posted before that was a video of her sucking dick, and the dick was censored out. So to jump from a blowjob video to a kidnapping and possible play fantasy is a big jump. And just because you disclaim that you would be posting hardcore porn, hardcore means a lot of things to different people. So a lot of people probably thought that she was just going to be posting like normal sex tapes. I don't think anyone really expected a kidnapping slash possible play fantasy. And when she posts her normal sexual content, obviously she probably gets a lot of criticism because she is a very well-known sex worker, but she never gets loads of backlash. But she did get a lot of backlash from this because people just didn't expect it. People weren't following her expecting to see play, and she didn't put a trigger warning. And this is why I firmly believe in kink belonging in kink spaces, because if this was posted in a kink space, I really don't think anyone would bat an eye. She wouldn't get a lot of backlash because that's where it should be. And I don't think Belle Delphine's Twitter with over 1 million followers is a kink space because she hadn't posted anything that extreme before. A way that she could have probably resolved this is probably just making another account especially for very extreme kink stuff. I feel like that's sort of the best way to go about it, and then leaving her like main Twitter for just sort of the average sex stuff. And again, because she posted this without any warning and no one was expecting it, there was a lot of backlash, but also there was a lot of conversations of people focusing on pedantics and the ethics of kidnapping and play. And look, I think that having these conversations is important, but you can't have a productive conversation about the ethics of certain kinks in Belle Delphine's Twitter replies, let's be honest. And again, like I said, she's taken both of these tweets down now, so maybe she's changed her mind about the entire situation, but I just thought it was quite interesting to talk about. Really quickly, I want to have a short discussion about kinks and misogyny, and in particular the Armie Hammer situation. If you guys don't know who Armie Hammer is, he's a pretty famous actor. He was in films like Call Me By Your Name and The Social Network, and that's literally the only films I know that he's been on. And recently he got exposed for having a cannibalism kink, which again, not getting into the ethics of kinks, but another thing which got exposed is allegedly, again, I'm not trying to get sued, he had been abusive to multiple girlfriends and partners, basically unhealthily partook in these kinks. And one thing I want to focus on, which I find quite interesting, is he used to partake in kinky sex with his wife, and then when they got married and they had a baby, allegedly he said that he didn't want to partake in kinks anymore because he grew to respect her too much. Men literally give me a new reason to hate them every single day. Some of you guys may be confused as to why this angers me so much. Just to put it really simply, if you can only partake in certain kinks, certain violent kinks with women such as spanking, hair pulling, choking, etc., only with women you don't respect, such as the hookup for example, that isn't a kink. You're just being misogynistic. If you don't want to partake in these kinks with certain women because you have too much respect for them, whether it's your wife, your girlfriend, the mother of your child, it's not a kink. You're just misogynistic. It's totally fine if you are a man who does not feel comfortable partaking in these kinks with any women. If that makes you uncomfortable, that's absolutely fine. But if you're someone who can only partake in these kinks with women that you deem not to respect, that is misogynistic. That means you just want to be violent towards women that you don't respect. And I do think that this links to the Madonna whore complex. The Madonna whore complex is a Freudian theory, and I know that a lot of people don't like Freud, but I do think that Freud was making points with this one. Basically, to someone who has a Madonna whore complex, which is a lot of men, they view women as two types. types. Either a Madonna, which is a virgin and a woman who is worth respect, a woman that they want to wife up, and a whore, a woman who is extremely sexual, who they don't want to wife up but they will have sex with. And this does come across in a lot of different ways in men. I'm not going to get into it because I feel like I can make a whole nother video about this. We hear a lot about men who fall in love with their girlfriends and aren't sexually attracted to them anymore because they can't see them in a sexual way. It feels wrong. That's Madonna whore complex. But I'm not going to get into it today. I'm going to make another video about it, I think. But yes, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. And again, thank you to Surfshark for sponsoring today's video. I will leave my link and my code down below so you guys can check it out and get 83% off and 3 months extra for free. I do hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys soon for another one. Bye!